Chapter 51. Who attacked me? Feng Sihai fiercely pulled out the toothpick and roared loudly. However, in the depths of Feng Sihai's eyes, there is a trace of fear. Although his hard qigong cannot be invulnerable, even if an ordinary person has a sharp weapon, he may not be able to break through his hard qigong. But now a small toothpick actually stabbed directly into his arm, which surprised Feng Sihai a little. He didn't expect that there are masters hidden among these people. Everyone looked at each other, no one knew who moved the hand. Only Lin Tianyu looked at David in surprise, with admiration in his eyes. It's me. David takes a step forward. You. Feng Sihai looked at David and frowned slightly. David is only in his early 20s, how could a young man have such strength? David, don't be too arrogant, it's not him. Sonya was shocked and hurriedly brought David back. Miss Su, Mr. Chen will be fine, you don't have to panic. Lin Tianyu stopped Sonya. Boy, you have to pay the price of your life for showing off. Do you want to stand up for Lin Tianyu? Feng Sihai asked in a cold voice. Don't talk nonsense, if you want to do it, hurry up, I'm very busy. David said expressionlessly. At this time, David actually began to have a layer of light mist all over his body. This is the gathering of the surrounding aura, and then a hard protection is formed around David's body. Except for Sonya desperately calling for David to come back, no one is discouraging David. All these people wanted to see if David really had the ability to make Jiyu Wenchen respect him so much. Court death. A cold light flashed in Feng Sihai's eyes, and he rushed towards David in an instant. Feng Sihai's speed was very fast, like a flash of lightning reaching David in an instant, and then a fist as big as a sandbag swung towards David. At this time, David looked at Feng Sihai calmly. Facing the swift and violent punch, David seemed to have never heard of it. Ah! Seeing this, Sonya exclaimed, no. But Feng Sihai didn't stop at all, and punched David's chest fiercely. Bang! This punch is full of hundreds of pounds of power, even a horse, I am afraid that under this punch, it will die. But the strange scene found that David's body, which was only more than 100 jins, did not move under this punch, but Feng Sihai's arms were strangely bent. The huge anti-vibration force caused Feng Sihai's arm to break directly, and the white bones of the forest penetrated the skin and were exposed. What? Feng Sihai cried out in pain, looking at his broken arm with disbelief. You can also harden qigong? Feng Sihai asked with a twisted face. No, a little, it's just fur. David sneered. However, no one would believe David's words. How could a hard qigong that even Feng Sihai couldn't break through? Sonya opened her mouth wide and saw that David was fine, her eyes were full of surprises. At this moment, David was much taller in her eyes, and the love in her heart increased. Who do you learn from? Why does my master, Yi Fengchen's unique hard qigong, do you too? Feng Sihai was a little puzzled. Who did David learn hard qigong from? I have no sect, and I am not a hard qigong. The so-called hard qigong is just a trick to deceive people. David smiled lightly and punched Feng Sihai in the chest. Feng Sihai spurted out a mouthful of blood and flew out. David is not a hard qigong, he is the method of cultivating immortals, not to mention Feng Sihai's punch, even a bullet can't penetrate David's shield. Chapter 52. Feng Sihai looked at David in horror, the shock in his heart was beyond words. With David's punch, Feng Sihai found that his hard qigong was useless. Brother, if you can leave your name as taboo, I will come back to Feng Sihai to ask for advice another day. Feng Sihai knew that he was not David's opponent, and there was no point in fighting. Feng Sihai would definitely withdraw first. Feng Sihai, do you want to leave? Tell you, Mr. Chen is here today, and this is your burial place. Lin Tianyu looked at Feng Sihai proudly. Feng Sihai's expression changed, and he looked at David with fear. If David really killed him, he might not be able to leave today. My name is David Chen, you can ask me for revenge at any time. If you don't agree, you can call your master. David knew what Feng Sihai meant and smiled coldly. Mr. Chen, you can't let the tiger go back to the mountain. Seeing that David really wanted to let Feng Sihai go, Lin Tianyu immediately persuaded him. I have my own measure, you step back. David frowned slightly. Seeing that David was going to be angry, Lin Tianyu was too frightened to speak anymore, so he hurried back. Okay, I remember, the green hills are always there, the green water is always flowing, we will have a future. Feng Sihai wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and waved his hand towards his hand. Let's go. Feng Sihai took the people away, and there were only those people who attended the banquet left in the huge hall. Mr. Chen is really good at it, I really learned it today. Having such an ability at such a young age, Mr. Chen's future is immeasurable. Sure enough, a hero comes out of a boy. Everyone praised David. Gu Wenchen did not expect that David was able to exorcise ghosts and subdue demons, yet his martial arts was so strong, which made him pay more attention to David. Mr. Chen, forgive my ignorance, and I hope that Mr. Chen will not take offense. Tang Long came to David with a face full of shame and apologized. It's okay. David smiled slightly, but he didn't take it to heart. At this time, Reuben looked at David and couldn't help but smile. He now raised his hands in agreement with Sonya and David. You know Kung Fu, and you don't say anything in advance, I'll worry about you for a long time. Sonya pretended to be angry and walked in front of David, and then twisted David's arm. Hey, David frowned, showing great pain, it hurts. Sonya was stunned when she looked at David like that. I'm not exerting any strength. Why does it hurt? Sonya was a little panicked. I was injured by Feng Sihai just now, and I have been holding on, but you are still screwing me. David pretended to be in pain, and looked at Sonya with complaints in his eyes. Where is the injury? Let me see, show me quickly. I don't know. Sonya looked at David's body in a panic, and looked like she was about to cry. Everyone around could see that David was pretending, even Reuben could see it, but he didn't say anything but looked at the two of them quietly. Only Sonya didn't realize that David was pretending because she was too concerned. Okay, as soon as you touch me, my injury is healed. David was about to cry when he saw Sonya, so he stopped making trouble with her. As soon as Sonya heard it, she immediately understood that she had been deceived. Okay, David, I'll kill you. Sonya raised a fist at David, and David ran away quickly. Seeing the two sparring, everyone laughed. Gu Wenchen patted Reuben on the shoulder. President Su, your Su family's future is limitless. Of course Reuben understood what Gu Wenchen meant, and quickly said modestly, we have to rely more on Gu to take care of him. I think it should be your Su family who will take care of me in the future. Gu Wenchen laughed loudly. Chapter 53. Pine Bay Hilltop Villa. After Barbara and Chen Baoguo walked around, they were sitting in the living room to rest. They never dreamed that they could live in such a luxurious house. Although the house is only for them to live in temporarily, they are lucky enough. It seems that God is not mean to our family. David has just been released from prison, and he can meet a good girl like Sonya. I don't know how the two met. Barbara said with a contented face. I don't know, but looking at Miss Su, she is a kind girl. Chen Baoguo used to be a civil servant, and he has seen a lot of people of all kinds, so he is very accurate. You said that people are so rich, what do you like about David? Barbara has always been a little worried in the depths of her heart. After all, their family and others are simply wrong. But just when Chen Baoguo was about to speak, a man in a suit and leather shoes suddenly pushed open the door and walked in. The man suddenly broke in, causing Chen Baoguo to be stunned for a moment. Let me answer you, in fact, Sonya is just playing with David casually. Do you really think that the dignified Miss Su will take a fancy to your David? Don't daydream, you two don't think about it, what does your David have? He's just a poor boy who graduated from an ordinary university and has been in prison. If it was your daughter who fell in love with this kind of person, would you agree? It's just that your family's David saved Sonya's father by mistake. So Sonya is so enthusiastic to repay her kindness, do you really think the two of them will get married? I'm Sonya's real boyfriend, and we've known each other for many years. The Green family and the Bamboo horses are in the same household. I advise you to give up early. Don't you know the virtues of your son? After the man finished speaking, he sneered at Chen Baoguo and Barbara, his eyes full of ridicule and disdain. After Barbara and Chen Baoguo heard the man's words, their faces turned red and then white, but they were speechless to refute. After all, what they said was the truth. Their family was just an ordinary family, and David was just an ordinary family. People, who have been in prison, who would want to marry their daughter to such a person. Seeing the reactions of Barbara and Chen Baoguo, The man was very satisfied, and he took out a stack of money from his bag and threw it in front of the two of them. Take the money and move out of here quickly. If you wait for the time to drive you away, you can don't blame me for being ruthless. After the man finished speaking, he turned around and left, then got into a sports car outside the courtyard and walked away, leaving only Barbara and Chen Baoguo sitting there blankly. The two seemed to be knocked down from the sky to the mortal world at once, and returned to reality. After a while, Chen Baoguo sighed heavily, got up and started to pack his things. They are not worthy of living here. Barbara's eyes were slightly red, and tears kept rolling in her eyes. Chen Baoguo simply tidied up, stepped forward and patted Barbara on the shoulder lightly. Let's go, wait for David to come back, talk to him well, let him recognize the reality, he and Miss Sue are not the same after all. Chen Baoguo and Barbara left and returned to their original house. Barbara, I heard that you followed David to live in a big villa, why are you back? Just returned to the original house, a middle-aged woman asked curiously. Her Aunt Wang, isn't she used to living here, so she moved back. Barbara heard that the other party was her old neighbor Wang Changfeng, so she smiled awkwardly. This Wang Changfeng is also not easy. When the child is in her teens, her husband dies, and she has brought her daughter up by herself. It's good to move back, our old neighbors can still chat. David just got out of prison, how can there be such a good thing? Let him live in the big villa, be careful not to let people use it, when the time comes, I will go in once. Life is ruined, Wang Changfeng said indifferently. Although the words are not good, but they do not have bad thoughts, they belong to the kind of knife-mouthed tofu-hearted. Understood, Barbara smiled and nodded. Chapter 54. In the Regal Hotel at this time, the banquet was over and everyone had already left. Gu Wenchen left David behind and said, Mr. Chen, you asked me to find the spirit pen in Cinnabar, because it is true that the Taoist priest went out to ask for it. Doctor, it will take a while to come back. It's okay, you have been working hard. David said with a slight smile. My mother's eyes have been so long, I don't care about waiting a few more days, after all, this kind of thing can't be rushed. Mr. Chen, what are you talking about? In the future, as long as Mr. Chen is useful, just speak up. Gu Wenchen said boldly. After a few greetings, David planned to leave, but was stopped by Tang Long, and then Tang Long suddenly knelt down in front of David. Mr. Chen is talented and talented, I hope Mr. Chen can accept me as a disciple. Tang Long just saw David's strength and wanted to defeat David as his teacher. David grabbed Tang Long's shoulders and lifted Tang Long with a little force. With my little ability, how can I be qualified to be a master? You think too highly of me. David practiced Fahui, and following Tang Long and the other warriors were not the same thing, so there was no way to teach him anything. Could it be that he had to be taught mentality? Mr. Chen, you. Tang Long, okay, since Mr. Chen said so, don't force it. Gu Wenchen stopped Tang Long, although Gu Wenchen himself is not a warrior, but he also understands some of the things inside, how can he easily teach others his own skills? Seeing this, Tang Long could only step aside and stop talking. Brother Tang, if you have anything, we can communicate and be your master, but I absolutely don't have the qualifications. David smiled apologetically. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Tang Long said with joy on his face. When David left the hotel and returned to the Pinerest Villa, he found that his parents were not there. Taking out his mobile phone, David called his parents. When he learned that Chen Baoguo and Barbara had returned to the original house, David hurried back. Dad, Mom, what are you doing here? Are you not used to living in Pine Bay? The air is better there and the environment is better, isn't it better than here? David asked in confusion. Chen Baoguo glanced at David, didn't say anything, went straight into the bedroom, but Barbara sighed. David, you just got out of prison, don't always think about getting rich overnight. Sonya is a good girl, but you can't take this as a threat because you saved someone's father's life. You are not the same people, and it is impossible for you to come together. In the future, you can find a job in a down-to-earth way, and don't think about anything. Mom, did someone say something to you? David frowned slightly. Don't worry about it, I said, you don't have to deal with Sonya anymore, and the house in Pine Bay is still given to others, and your dad and I will not go there either. I don't ask you to be rich, you just need to find a good share. Work, Just marry a daughter-in-law and pass on the lineage. Barbara's tone was a little heavy, and it looked like she was angry. Seeing that his mother was angry, David didn't dare to say anything, so he could only nod his head. Mom, I'll listen to you. Over the years, my mother has cried and blinded her eyes for herself. I don't know how much she has suffered. David doesn't want to make his mother angry anymore. Seeing David being so happy, he agreed. Tang Hong said in a softer tone, I asked your father to contact your Uncle Zhang, go see tomorrow, and see if he can help you find a job. Han has also graduated. I heard that he has found a good job and earns a lot of money. You two have known each other since childhood. Although Barbara can't see with her eyes, she has always been thinking about big and small things in her heart. Chapter 55. What to say? If the two children agree, I have no opinion. After all, I also watched David grow up. It's not a problem for him to be imprisoned. At this time, Wang Changfeng walked in with a large bowl. This is the sauce I made myself, you can try it. Aunt Wang. When David saw Wang Changfeng walking in, he hurriedly reached out and took the bowl. Since David came to Horendal when he was a teenager, he has been a neighbor with Wang Changfeng's family, so the two have a very good relationship. Aunt Wang, you are too polite. Hanhan's child, I have also grown up from childhood, sensible and beautiful. If our two families can really be AKSS, that would be great. Barbara got up and pulled Wang Changfeng to sit down together. Barbara, my family Han really came to your house, and I'm relieved. After all, I'm just such a daughter, and I have to count on her when I'm old, so I don't want her to marry away. I'll call Han tonight, let her go home and let's have dinner together. Wang Changfeng said happily. It can be seen that she is also very satisfied with David. Okay, but I heard that Han has found a good job and earns a lot of money. Barbara nodded happily. I earn a lot of money, but if I don't go home all day, it's hard for me to see her once. Wang Changfeng said, picked up the phone and called his daughter. Soon the call was connected, and Wang Han's lazy voice came. Mom, why are you calling me at this hour? I'm still sleeping. You child, it's already afternoon, why are you still sleeping? Don't you have to go to work? Wang Changfeng was stunned. Oh, I have to work overtime tonight, so take a nap in the afternoon, what's the matter? Wang Han asked hurriedly. Oh, your brother David has been released from prison. I want to tell you to go home at night, and let's have a meal together. Wang Changfeng said. Mom, I don't have time, wait a few days, these 2 days are too busy. After speaking, Wang Han hung up the phone. Wang Changfeng looked a little embarrassed listening to the busy tone on the phone. Aunt Wang, since Han is too busy, let's change it another day, it's not worse than 1 or 2 days. Barbara was afraid that Wang Changfeng would be angry, and hurriedly persuaded her. Hey, now that the child is older, it's really not obedient at all. Wang Changfeng sighed. Wang Changfeng stayed at David's house until the evening, while David had nothing to do and planned to go out for a walk. At this moment, Lin Tianyu called and wanted to invite David to a meal. David was Lin Tianyu's boss at the scene. Of course, Lin Tianyu wanted to curry favor. Originally David wanted to refuse, but after thinking about it, if he went home for dinner, Wang Changfeng was still at their house, and it was estimated that they would have dinner together. At the dinner table, he would definitely nag him with his parents, so David said promised. Lin Tianyu wanted to pick up David, but David refused, took a taxi and headed towards the restaurant that Lin Tianyu said. In the past few years when David was imprisoned, Horendal developed very fast. There are dozens of bars and KTVs in a small city. At night, the bright neon lights flashed, and the streets were full of handsome men and beautiful women. Just when David's taxi passed a Fengyu bar, he suddenly saw a familiar figure, dressed in beautiful clothes, walking into the bar with a few girls. Wang Han. David frowned slightly. Calling in the afternoon. This Wang Han also said that he worked overtime at night. Why did he suddenly appear in the bar? Could it be that this Wang Han has been working in the bar? In order to find out, David stopped the taxi, and after paying the fare, he followed Wang Han all the way in.
Please subscribe to follow the next more exciting chapters.